was told that one of the countries in Asia won't use the picture because of the color of my skin.
There was a night in Paris, back in the early 2000s, when the world expected Naomi Campbell to close a major runway show, just as she had dozens of times before. The room was electric, buzzing with anticipation for the queen of the catwalk. But when the final spotlight hit the runway, Naomi never appeared. Whispers began to spread backstage. She had been dropped last minute. No explanation, no press statement, no scandal, just silence. In an industry where designers fought to have her name attached to their shows, this was unthinkable. What changed? It wasn't her performance, her walk was flawless. It wasn't her fame, she was already a global icon. The unspoken truth lingered in every corner of the Fashion Week venues. She was too black for the aesthetic they wanted. Years later, Naomi herself revealed that she had been quietly banned or excluded from multiple major shows, not because she lost her edge, but because the fashion world was shifting back toward a more Eurocentric ideal. It wasn't about the clothes anymore. It was about maintaining a look that didn't include her. The same industry that once used her as a token of diversity now saw her as an inconvenience. And the most painful part? No one publicly defended her. But how does one of the most recognizable supermodels in the world get quietly erased while still at her prime? To understand that, we have to go back to where it all started, to the very roots of Naomi's rise and the system she was always up against. Naomi Campbell was never supposed to happen, not in the way she did. Born in 1970 in South London to a single Jamaican mother, Naomi never knew her father. Her earliest dreams weren't stitched into designer gowns, but shaped through the discipline of ballet, where she trained rigorously at the Italia Conti Academy. At 15, while walking in Covent Garden after school, she was spotted by a modeling scout. Most girls would have blended into the noise of the city. Naomi didn't. There was something about her presence, poised, magnetic, unshakably confident, that made her impossible to ignore. And soon, the fashion world couldn't. By 18, she had already graced the covers of British Elle and Vogue, breaking barriers no one had dared to confront. But with every camera flash, a silent tension grew. Naomi wasn't the industry's quiet muse. She spoke up, demanded respect, and didn't shrink herself to fit anyone's narrative. She didn't ask for permission to exist in a white-dominated fashion world. She took her space, and that made some people uncomfortable. Behind the glamour, resentment was quietly brewing. Because Naomi Campbell wasn't just becoming a supermodel, she was becoming uncontrollable. And in a world built on control, that made her dangerous. Naomi Campbell was everywhere, on billboards, on the arms of A-list designers, on the covers of Vogue, Time, and Elle. Her beauty was undeniable, her walk unforgettable. She had become the face of high fashion, yet behind the curtains, casting directors still whispered doubts. She was too strong, too opinionated, too much. In rooms filled with pale, porcelain models, Naomi's presence wasn't just striking, it was disruptive. She wasn't just another pretty face, she was power, and that made the fashion world uneasy. Despite her success, she was often turned away from runways others walked freely. Designers would love her publicly, then quietly exclude her from key shows. And the excuses? Never about her walk, her professionalism, or her talent. The subtext was louder than the silence. Naomi, a dark-skinned black woman commanding space in an industry built on Eurocentric ideals, was stepping beyond what was allowed. Was it her attitude they feared, or the revolution her presence symbolized? The deeper Naomi's impact grew, the more the gatekeepers pushed back. But Naomi wasn't just walking runways anymore, she was challenging the system beneath them. And soon, that tension would erupt into very public consequences. At first, it was subtle. A missed call here, a vague email there. Not the right fit this season, they said. Going in a different direction. But Naomi Campbell knew the game. These weren't just creative choices, they were calculated exclusions. Despite being at the top of her field, booking major campaigns and gracing magazine covers, she suddenly found herself unwelcome at some of fashion's most prestigious runways. No official bans, no statements, just silence. Agencies that once begged for her availability stopped returning calls. Designers she had helped make relevant were now ghosting her altogether. There was no dramatic fallout, no public feud, just an invisible wall. And that's what made it crueler. The rejection came cloaked in politeness, in the language of taste and trends, when in reality, it was the industry retreating from what Naomi represented, a powerful Black woman who refused to shrink herself. She wasn't being punished loudly. She was being erased, quietly, professionally, systematically. And this wasn't happening in a vacuum. Behind the scenes, Naomi was beginning to see a pattern. Others who looked like her were also being filtered out. The unspoken message was clear. And Naomi? She wasn't going to stay silent. Naomi Campbell wasn't celebrated as a breakthrough, she was managed like a checkbox. As fashion brands scrambled to appear inclusive, they rarely changed the system. Instead, they created an illusion, one Black model per show. And more often than not, that one was Naomi. But it wasn't a compliment, it was a ceiling. The moment her presence was seen as enough, others who looked like her were turned away. In 1997, fashion critic Robin Given wrote, "Campbell was the exception who proved the rule." Her success made designers feel they'd done enough. Behind closed doors, Naomi heard it too. "We already have you," one casting director reportedly told her. Another stylist whispered, "The client said only one and you're too recognizable." What was framed as diversity was really tokenism, neatly packaged for press releases, not rooted in progress. Naomi's success wasn't replicated, it was isolated. And that isolation came with a consequence. Her rising profile began to feel like a threat, not a triumph. She wasn't just the face of high fashion, she was now the limit of it. But Naomi wasn't designed to be a quota. And in the next chapter, we'll see what happens when someone refuses to play by a system built to contain them. As Naomi's presence on the runway began to dwindle, something even more painful unfolded: silence. The same designers who once fawned over her cheekbones and catwalk prowess had nothing to say when she was quietly removed from lineups. The same stylists who praised her versatility and the editors who put her on covers suddenly disappeared. No statements, no questions, no pushback. It was as if her erasure had been quietly agreed upon. Naomi once said, "It hurt more that people I thought were my friends didn't stand up." And perhaps that was the harshest truth. She was surrounded by applause, not protection. Her white peers, who had shared runways and campaigns with her, offered no public solidarity. And behind the scenes, it wasn't talent or legacy that granted access. It was whiteness. The industry had gatekeepers, and almost all of them were white. Creative directors, casting agents, executives, they held the keys, and they decided who got to walk and who didn't. And when Naomi began to speak out about racism, those keys were turned against her. Not by open hatred, but by cold avoidance. She was labeled difficult, angry, ungrateful, a familiar script used to punish women of color who speak out. The message was clear: your voice is only welcome when it doesn't shake the room. But Naomi was never meant to stay quiet. And in the next part of this story, we see what happens when she finally stops playing by their rules and starts creating her own. When Naomi Campbell stopped whispering and began speaking out, the industry didn't applaud her courage, they punished it. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. She wasn't radiant or legendary anymore. She was difficult. That word started showing up in whispers behind doors, in casting calls, in editorials. Hard to manage, too demanding, uncontrollable. But what had she done, really? She set boundaries. She demanded fair treatment. She refused to accept being tokenized or silenced. And in an industry that expects Black women to smile through disrespect and carry twice the weight for half the credit, her refusal to shrink became a threat. It's a story as old as time. When a Black woman asserts her worth, she's labeled a problem. And that label becomes a tool, a way to blacklist without ever writing it down. The difficult narrative gave the fashion elite a perfect excuse. We didn't exclude her because she's Black. We did it because she's hard to work with. But Naomi saw through it. And instead of breaking under the pressure, she began to push back. The next chapter isn't about silence. It's about resistance. About the moment Naomi stopped waiting for the doors to open and started building her own. After Naomi was quietly pushed out of the spotlight, the fashion runways told a chilling story. Not with words, but with absence. For several seasons, her unmistakable presence was gone. And so, too, was the momentum she had helped ignite. The catwalks of Paris, Milan, and New York slowly reverted to their old patterns, predominantly white, dangerously uniform. In 2008, The Guardian reported that out of 677 models featured in New York Fashion Week, only 6% were black. Naomi's absence wasn't just personal, it was symbolic. Her erasure sent a message. Diversity in fashion was conditional, performative, and easily reversed. Side-by-side images from early 2000s to mid-2010s showed the difference starkly. One season featured a colorful tapestry of skin tones, and the next bleached back to monotone. Without Naomi's unapologetic visibility, fashion slid back into its comfort zone. But Naomi wasn't watching from the sidelines. Behind the scenes, she was planning something bigger, something that would shake the industry's foundations. When Naomi finally reappeared on the world's most prestigious runways, headlines called it a triumphant return. Designers applauded, magazines cheered, cameras chased her every move once again. But beneath the glittering lights and roaring applause, something darker lingered, because the fashion world welcomed her back without ever acknowledging why she was gone. No apologies, no accountability. The same brands that once sidelined her now paraded her image like a trophy, using her legendary status to signal progress, without ever confronting the pain they helped create. Naomi was being celebrated, yes, but not healed, not heard. Her return wasn't redemption. It was strategy. A face to fix a fractured reputation. She smiled for the cameras, but those who looked closely saw the difference. Naomi wasn't just modeling anymore, she was making a statement. And as she walked those runways again, she was no longer playing by their rules. She was preparing to rewrite them. They tried to silence her with labels: difficult, diva, dangerous. They tried to erase her from the very runways she helped revolutionize. But Naomi Campbell endured. Not just as a supermodel, but as a cultural force, proof that Black brilliance, no matter how threatened, cannot be dimmed. Her presence shattered the industry's narrow standards of beauty. Her absence revealed just how fragile their version of diversity really was. Naomi's legacy isn't stitched into fabric or framed in glossy covers. It's etched into the very foundation of fashion's evolution. She showed the world that resilience is not quiet. It walks unapologetically down every runway that once said no, and even now, her stride still echoes, a reminder that true power doesn't ask permission. It makes history.